Aircraft maintenance is primarily driven by flight hours and cycles. When aircraft are not active, then maintenance demand will be lower. Airline operators before now had to delay and defer maintenance events into the future owing to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now the flying has restarted. Will the big birds have to go through more checks before taking to the skies, especially across airframe and engine components? These are focused on this edition as the 777 aircraft is grounded among fleet operators after an incident in the United States. Plus, the Asaba International Airport goes through a formal concessioning process. A warm welcome to the program. I'm BUKOLA JOE-OKETUNBI. Let's take off from here.
Airline travel is normally fast, convenient and safe. The environment in the cabin is usually welcoming, but a lot has changed in COVID-19 times due to social distancing and nose mask, plus other measures put in place to curb the spread of the virus. Flying would never take place without the big birds taking to the skies. The weight of the aircraft, type and design also comes with its own challenges. One challenge that has come with the pandemic is the absence of active aircraft maintenance. Maintenance is primarily driven by flight hours and cycles. Since aircrafts were not active, checks had to be delayed and some deferred.
Your C-check, D-check or engine overhaul is a function of calendar. They can say after 2 years or after 18 months, you must do this test, or after so hours of flight, or after so number of cycles. Cycle is when you take off from Nigeria, you land in US, is one cycle, 12 hours flight.
These events, however, can only be pushed so far, and some are calendar mandated. Here in Lagos, Nigeria, a Boeing 737 aircraft belonging to Azman Air had a bust tie on landing at the runway of the Murtala Mohammed International Airport Terminal, leading to a temporary closure of one of the runways at the airport. Away from the incident, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority announced the lifting of the ban on the Boeing 737 MAX aircraft in the Nigerian airspace, following a joint review of the Boeing 737 MAX safety system by international aviation authorities. Now to the United States, where a Denver flight suffered a right engine failure. BRENDA DOHN is a nervous passenger who boarded the flight from Colorado to Hawaii. She says it looks like it was going to be a smooth trip.
It took off like a normal flight, and I'm kind of afraid to fly anyway, and we got in the plane and I thought, this looks like a nice plane. It's clean, it looks newish. I was like, this will be fine, easy going. And we started and everything started well, and then all of a sudden it was just this big, you could just feel it like boom, and you could hear it, and we started shaking. And we were right on the wing, so I looked out and I could see some smoke coming, and I just knew, you just know something's wrong, something's not right.
The flight bound for Honolulu had to return owing to an engine problem shortly after departing Denver International Airport, scattering debris.
I did see some debris flying at us where we were sitting, and I just thought, I don't know if I want to know how bad this is. I just hope we get down. So that's kind of where I was at. Yeah, my daughter was sitting on the window, and she's I was just like, don't look, like let's close it up and let's just pray. So that's what we did. We kind of just held hands and said some prayers. So it was shaky. It was a shaky ride all the way down. Yep.
The flight did return safely to the airport. United Airlines in a statement said there were no reported injuries on Flight 328, which had 231 passengers and 10 crew on board. The 26-year-old 777 was powered by two Pratt & Whitney PW4000 engines. Following the incident, the U.S. plane manufacturer Boeing recommended grounding all of the 777 model aircraft which have the same type of engine that suffered failure. It said 128 jets should be suspended until U.S. regulators identify the appropriate inspection protocol. This falls short of a mandatory global grounding, but is another headache for the plane maker after its 737 MAX crisis and comes after criticism of U.S. Federal Aviation Administration oversight regarding the 737 MAX. Now to rival aircraft maker Airbus, as the European plane maker is calling for a ceasefire in a transatlantic trade war over aircraft subsidies.
And we really believe it's a lose-lose situation for everyone, in particular in the pandemic. So we believe the conditions are in place to first start with a ceasefire, to suspend tariffs, have a negotiation, and move forward. And that's really what we believe should happen and most likely will happen.
Washington has progressively imposed import duties of 15% on Airbus jets from 2019 after a prolonged dispute at the World Trade Organization, and the EU responded with matching tariffs on Boeing jets a year later. Brazil, which has waged separate battles with Canada over subsidies for smaller regional jets, has dropped its own complaint and called for a global peace agreement between producing nations on the needed support for aerospace in the pandemic. Now to airlines, as Air France-KLM announces it's going deeper into the red as renewed COVID-19 lockdowns are impacting the carrier. The airline group says it chalked up $8.5 billion net loss for 2020 and postponed a key midterm profitability goal. The airline group expects to fly 40% of its pre-crisis capacity in January to March, as tougher travel curbs in France and beyond widens losses from the €407 million in negative earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation and amortization recorded in the fourth quarter.
V1.
The past year has tested the Air France-KLM group with the most severe crisis ever experienced by the air transport industry. Analysts have warned that the worsening travel outlook threatens to ruin Europe's critical summer season and leave major carriers in need of another round of funding support. Air France-KLM last year received €10.4 billion in loans and guarantees from France and the Netherlands and is negotiating the terms of a state-backed recapitalization, with EU regulators pushing for airport slots concessions. The carrier cut its workforce by 8,700 full-time equivalent positions in 2020 and expects to eliminate a further 6,000.
But it was a lot of effort that we had to put in place in order to be in a position to return the airplane back to service eventually when the lockdown was. So in the maintenance program continues to run. When an aeroplane, whether an airplane is in service or on ground, there are items in the maintenance program, inspections and checks, all those things continue to run. But the thing is that during storage, because the aeroplane is not flying, some aspects will stay stagnant, some aspects will keep running. For instance, all maintenance inspections that are done on calendar basis, that means from a particular date of the month to another particular date of another month, all those ones, it doesn't matter whether you fly the airplane or not, those ones, as of the date that they are due, we are expected to do them. And there are some inspections that are determined based by how much the airplane has flown. So for those inspections that are driven by how much flights the airplane have done, those ones will stagnate. But then a lot of the jobs, more than 50% of the jobs on an aeroplane are driven by calendar, one way or the other. Even when you say flight hours, you fly 50 hours, then you always have a proviso. If you don't make 50 hours in a month, still do this other one. So that's how it works. There are items that are monitored on the aeroplane based on their physical appearance. When an aeroplane comes back from flight, an engineer can look at it, look at the physical appearance or condition of that thing to determine whether it is still serviceable. Those items are called on condition. For instance, the tire of an aeroplane, if it goes to Abuja and comes back, you want to look at that tire. Do you have a puncture? Is the tire worn? Do you have damage on the wheel or anything? If there is damage, you remove it. If there's no damage, it continues in service. That's on condition. The other one like it is the one that we call hard time. That's basically what most of us talk about many times when we are talking about maintenance. That's the one that says that once an item has stayed on an aeroplane for a particular time period or for a particular number of hours and cycles, it must be removed for some maintenance action. So, for instance, A checks on the aeroplane is done maybe at 250 hours. As long as the aeroplane has reached 250 hours, it will go nowhere unless you do another inspection like that. So, on the engines, not to bore everybody, on the engines, engines are driven. Some aspects of the engines are on and they are on hard time. That means you cannot run them beyond their approved life. If the manufacturer says this engine should run for 3,000 cycles, that means 3,000 landings, 3,000 flights. You can't do 3,001. So there is that other aspect. But there's this other aspect that says if an engine is on ground, you must run it every 10 days to make sure that the engine is still in good shape. So in the first scenario, when you say 3,000 landings, and therefore you can't run the engine beyond 3,000 landings, that is hard time. In the second case, you are not flying the aeroplane, it's on ground, you are not starting the engine. If you don't start the engine at least once in 10 days, there's a chance that you may start having rust or water sitting down in the engine and creating problems eventually when you start to fly. So we have to mix both of them together in order to determine our maintenance schedule or workload.
It's an historic day at the Asaba International Airport in Delta State after years of negotiations on how, who, and when the facility will be concessioned. After an extensive bid process which spanned a period of 5 years, with two major consortia emerging in the last round of bidding, the FIDC Menzies Consortium is now to operate as the master concessionaire.
It will be a warehouse and commercial aircraft coming. And it's quite fascinating to hear.
Our long-term development plan is to transform the Asaba International Airport into an airport city whose infrastructure, land use, and economy are centered around the airport.
The signing ceremony is next to formally adopt all agreements.
The DG, represented here by Engineer Professor Sani.
To work with technical partners as sub-concessionaires. The state governor shares details of the long and short-term expectations.
It is their duty to manage the airport and develop the various strategic business units in the form of cargo business and the development of the cargo terminal, development of the logistics hub and cargo warehouses, the operation and management of the tank farm, the development and management of the business park, the development and management of the hotel and convention center, an airline operating out of Asaba International Airport as an operational hub, aircraft maintenance, repair, and overhaul MRO facility.
And the Ministry of Aviation lends support to this concessioning plan.
We at the aviation agencies, by what we have seen, what is being envisaged for this airport to be transformed, the scope of our activities are definitely going to increase tremendously, which means there are going to be much expectations on our side. I want to assure His Excellency that we at the aviation agencies will do everything that is possible within our powers to continue assisting the state government to get this airport properly managed.
While the airport has undergone a rehabilitation and reconstruction of its runway, taxiway and other ancillary works, leading to an upgrade of the airport to Category 6, Parties here believe this concession is a viable option for the airport to be run more professionally and profitably.
Jasiri, Shuja and Tumaini only landed in Kenya just over 2 weeks ago. They are not humans, but are already playing an important role in curbing the spread of the country's coronavirus epidemic. The 3 glossy white robots made in China and donated by Japan and the United Nations Development Programme have been put to work at Nairobi's main international airport, keeping it disinfected and monitoring arrivals for signs of the virus.
Jasiri's role in this airport is to enhance the safety of international travel. And by that I mean its ability to, 1, take temperature, its ability to sanitize the environment around it, and more importantly for us and for the entire country is the fact that it relays confidence in the safety of air travel.
It can do screening of 200 passengers per minute. So it takes the temperature and records and store that data in one of the computers that we have.
As Jasiri, a Swahili word meaning brave, does his rounds, he sprays fine jets of sanitizer from containers attached to his sides and takes infrared pictures with a camera mounted on an extendable neck. While scanning hundreds of passengers per minute and in tone flat English tells those not wearing face masks to put them on and those standing too close to others to respect social distancing rules.
These smart anti-robotic solutions are envisaged as a measure to mitigate the inherent risks by supporting some of the high exposure functionalities like temperature screening, mask detection, automatic disinfection, and audio and video broadcasting and conferencing.
Meanwhile, the trio are also helping to curb the spread of an epidemic that has so far killed almost 1,800 and infected more than 100,000 in the East African nation and saving passengers time on arrival formalities.
This is one more example of how the future is going to look. The future is going towards contactless travel, is going towards automation, it's going towards a greater focus on what you call health security. And that's where the future is going to. We've just come from a COVID pandemic. You could call that the era of bio-insecurity, but now we're going to more health and safety and security combined and technology. I see that as a powerful force for the enhancement of air travel in the future.
Welcome to Hotel Sky.
From Kenya Airport to Hotel Sky in Johannesburg's wealthy Sandton district, where all staff adhere to strict COVID-19 protocols, wearing masks and physically distancing from guests as much as possible, except Lexi, Micah and Ariel. The 3 concierges could not breathe germs on you, even if you wanted them to. Robot hospitality is nothing new. Japanese hotels have been deploying them for years, and in 2015, Tokyo's Hena or Strange Hotel became the first to be fully staffed by droids.
We thought this is a great opportunity for us to do something that has never been done in Africa before. And so we sourced these robots from Sandbot, and then we started to program them and make them African. So yes, this is the very first hotel in Africa that has robots.
Hotel Sky, which launched this year, is the first in Africa to use automated attendants, a concept that could be controversial in a country with one of the world's worst jobless rates, 30.8%, according to President Cyril Ramaphosa's State of the Nation earlier address.
Robots will never ever replace people, never, especially in a hospitality environment where we're humans that want people contact, we want that social interaction, and robots just can't do that. But what they can do is they can offer you a great concierge experience. They assist us with analytics in the hotel space, so they would be able to pick up with facial recognition mood, it's called mood sentiment, to see whether people's facial expressions are happy or sad.
Lexi, Micah and Ariel deliver room service, provide travel information and can drag up to 300 kilograms of luggage from its marble-floored lobby to the rooms. If the hotel receives a guest at high risk from severe COVID-19 symptoms, the robots could be deployed instead of people as a precaution. CTRO Robotics, which supplies the droid, says this is the future.
As you've seen, this whole hotel is teched out, but another layer was to put some sort of automation. And how could we bring robotics into the space? So about a year and a bit ago, just over a year ago, Paul said, I want a robot that can do A and B and C and D, and I wanted to work within into this new flagship space that we're building, Hotel Sky in Santon. And he kind of gave us this big vision and a brief, and he said, go for it and start building. And pretty much from that day, we started working, and we started pushing these about a few months ago, actually, into the hotel.
While the robots are at work, guests can opt to interact with more traditional staff if they don't want to lose that human touch.
Moving away from aircraft retirement to the cargo subsector, which escaped a total lockdown and is now the brightest spot in the industry.
Air transport generates benefits to customers and the wider economy by providing speedy connections between cities. These virtual bridges in the air enable the economic flows of goods, investments, people and ideas that are the fundamental drivers of economic growth. The most important benefits from air transport go to passengers and cargo agents, and the spillover impacts on their businesses. Demand for air cargo has rebounded sharply since national lockdowns have eased, with strong growth expected for the remainder of 2020. For the International Transport Association, air cargo demand appears to be one of the few bright spots in the global airline sector, owing to the transport of medical equipment and essential supplies. Although global air freight requirements were roughly 13% lower in July 2020 when the recovery started, it was nothing compared to 2019 because large amounts of belly freight space on passenger aircraft has been taken out of service. Before the crisis, roughly 50% of air cargo was carried on passenger aircraft. Here in Nigeria, industry practitioners put figures to the face of cargo recovery.
Before COVID-19, we're grossing, if you look at our cargo volume, we're doing something like 5.5 million tons and above. During the period of COVID-19, during the lockdown, it came as low as about just 1 million tons. So you can see the gap of about 4 million ton difference,
While IATA highlights that air freight will be required to transport a COVID-19 vaccine when it does become available, beyond vaccines, locally export of cargo at one of the ground handling company was between 400 to 500 metric tons monthly for several years, but had since increased in the COVID-19 crisis. Aircraft capacity is now a key issue.
The lockdown and the COVID itself was kind of a blessing in terms of exports.
And in the mix, challenges still persist.
Of course, we have loss of jobs too, which is very evident. When you look around, you find that most of the airlines, they've all had job losses and job cuts, which is also a worldwide phenomenon.
For many in the cargo business, government should keep striving to create an enabling environment where goods, including perishable cargo, can be stored and get to their destinations quickly.
This is where the program winds down. See you next time, God willing, and keep safe. I'm BUKOLA JOE-OKETUNMBI.